inside, our hearts so bitter by, and we'll never tire. We do not comply. We do not comply.
You think Dan's a Muslim?
He could be.
That would be one of the biggest surprises of my life. That Dan is secretly praying to Mecca a few times a day.
Right. And he's gone to...
I always think he's doing cigarette breaks, but he's really just praying to Mecca.
I mean, you can't judge. I mean, you know.
I don't care.
The idea of jihad is jihad nafsi, you know, fighting to cleanse your own soul so God can accept you at some point. And the Muslims also believe that there is the day of Qiyamah. And the day of Qiyamah is the day of judgment. So it's not up to us to judge. He could be a Muslim who smokes a couple of cigarettes.
Is there a big Muslim population in Africa?
Yeah, it's the whole of North Africa. They also have a lot of Muslims.
Wasn't also Christian too? Isn't there a lot of Christians there?
In North Africa?
Yeah.
Very few of them. In
Really?
places like Egypt, you know, Tunisia, the French influence in Tunisia too, you know, some Catholicism here and there, but you're looking at over 90% Muslim in those countries up there.
I was reading these stories about like the largest or the oldest Bible in the world is in Ethiopia.
Right.
And they think that that's where the Ark of the Covenant is.
Yep. There's a story out there in Ethiopia. They have some very interesting history with Christianity. And also Judaism. They're Jews in Ethiopia. And some have actually been given citizenship.
In Israel?
In Israel, yes.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, not a joke.
Man, the things that we don't know.
True.
I mean, you know it.
Ethiopia,
I don't know it.
Ethiopia has a very long history. It's one of those places that I think usually Egypt takes a lot of credit, but Ethiopia also has a lot of really good history if you follow Ethiopia.
All right. So you wanted to come. Sorry about the cough. I can't. It's the one thing I can't get rid of over the last 2 weeks is this upper respiratory cough.
Right. That's why I said I should bewitch you so you can quit.
Quit. That's not a smoking cough.
Okay.
You know,
you don't like the bewitching part.
I don't like the bewitching part.
Don't be scared. I'm not gonna do it to kill you. It's just you know what I mean, to save a couple of dollars from
Tell me
cigarettes.
about the bewitching. You want to? Can we talk about that for a couple minutes?
Right. So listen, there is a friend of mine in Ohio. I don't care. I can also mention the name, but you know,
don't mention any names. Don't even. Just
that's fine.
Broad strokes.
Well, yeah, it's not a secret, but you know, they run a business and they also do some traditional herbs from Africa, and one of those is to help someone quit, drinking. So. With witchcraft, it's not all bad. It's not like, you know, everything in witchcraft is trying to set you up to evil. There is also witchcraft that is used for good, you know. So it's actually a thing where you do some rituals to cleanse and detoxify someone of something.
So this is big in your culture, is the witchcraft thing. What would be the comparison to like America? So like witchcraft is to your culture as what is to America?
Witchcraft is everything. So it could be advanced medicine here.
Oh, really?
Yes, it could be that.
Okay.
It could also be law enforcement.
Really?
It could also be religion. It's everything. It's a mix of everything. So if you look at it as advanced medicine, in my tribe, there used to be incidences where someone falls off a tree and breaks a leg or something, you know, has a fracture. And let's say we're here in Scranton and the guy that is actually able to fix the fracture is in Philly, in Philadelphia. So what you do is you do something where it's evokes the spirits and instructs you who is here in Scranton to wake up in the morning when the sun is just rising, you know. You expose your legs so there is a shadow on a wall somewhere. And once that shadow forms, the other person receives an exact copy of that shadow on a wall, wherever he is in Philadelphia. So, and then starts mending your fracture from that shadow that he's looking at. And you feel pain here when the person is doing that.
Have you witnessed this?
This is real. I haven't witnessed this because this is a story from the village.
Okay.
I grew up in a place that was multicultural, but my dad tells us these stories, and I verified the stories with my uncles. You know, like when I went to the refugee camp recently, I sat down and verified the stories, and I didn't tell him. He told me that. I was just curious. I'm like, hey, yeah, and all the stories came out true. They both grew up in the villages where this was done. Remember, there are no hospitals there. My father was on one of the expeditions to take medicine under the flag of the Red Cross to many of these villages there. These villages are they're so out of touch with the rest of the world that there is actually a place called Mbinguni, which is the Swahili word for heaven.
Really?
Yeah. Remember we talked about infrastructure, roads and railway.
Yeah.
This is not fully developed in the Congo. So, people trek for miles, in those villages. In some places you can't drive. They're not drivable. Unless you have like an ATV or something, who owns it there? So people just walk for miles. And in some places where they have at least a semblance of a road, you can only do that with heavy trucks, These heavy trucks are somehow modified and, they travel these distances. But a distance from here to Philly would take up to 2 weeks to do because of the nature of the roads.
But people are traveling to heal themselves, correct?
To do what?
To heal themselves.
To heal themselves. It's also business, these trucks will carry a lot of goods, We don't. Our tribe does not keep cows, so for us to get beef, cattle has to be transported on these trucks from, let's say, Bukavu, where there are tribes that keep cows, to places like Kamituga and beyond, deep inside the Lega people, and so there's a lot of trade with these. Moves. People also carry heavy luggage for a very long time. People can carry luggage, very heavy luggage. We're talking about a little over 300 pounds from here to Philly. And I'm saying that because I know the distance from here to Philly. So it's something I can relate to.
Okay. So you said there's no hospitals.
They're not hospitals. Yeah, in places where I'm saying they're not hospitals. If places like Shabunda, for example, these are very, very remote places. You cannot reach easily unless you're flying in these small planes.
But do people come there for healing? Do people come there for?
So they're medicine men. They're witch doctors.
But they have results, right?
Yes, they do have results. Yeah. No, these are not stories that I make up, because even in the refugee camp, I told the story of this big python that we went to pick up, and we took the fat from the python. We melted the fat, kept it in a bottle. And people used to come even at night. So that, our child is suffering from this and that, and we're looking for that. We were told that you guys have the fat. Would you please give us a little bit? So we'd take the tip of and put it in a small piece of polythene bag and give them. So they would use that to apply things like if you have a wound or something, you'd apply. That it dries off. So that's one of the examples. But there are millions of examples. There are specific plants that would go and pick up and use for malaria, for example. Cough, there is something I think in Kinyarwanda they call muravumbwa. It's a very special plant. The leaves, you mix that with salt and chew, cough is gone. We do have another one called mubirizi. And these are all Kinyarwanda terms. We lived with people that spoke Kinyarwanda as their first language. Mubirizi is also a tree with very bitter leaves. You chew that, it helps with malaria. You can pound it, squeeze the water out of it, take it. It's not different from the medicine you buy from CVS.
How does that? Why do we not? It's very strange to me that we don't do stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the problem is everything has become corporate.
Oh, yeah.
And also people like to look at nice stuff. It's water's better in a very good bottle. But if you go pick this up from the stream, oh, that's dirty. It has some germs in it. It's gonna make me sick. But at the same time, we know that you need some of those germs to strengthen your immunity. It's just what it is.
It's so fascinating to me.
Yeah. Look, I think this is not about survival, but it's just it's reality. In places where we have no hospitals, they're still going the traditional way. Because
but they're having efficacy. Like there has success.
It has efficacy, and even during COVID, people were saying, well, Africa with its health systems and everything,
crushed
people
it.
will die. But yeah, I can guarantee not a lot of people died of COVID there, except for whatever was presented in the news.
I just saw a statistic that said America had 10 times the deaths of Haiti. And the Haitians only had 1.4% of their population vaccinated.
Yeah.
So what is that? What did Haiti do right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes it's not about rushing for vaccines or certain kinds of medicines, And I think my only problem with COVID is that people were not given time. And no. Let's start with the vaccine itself.
Go.
I'm not an MD or something, but I'll tell you this from the little science I learned in school. I know that how the vaccine works is you injected the vaccine. It has to work in your body for some time to be able to somehow push the body. Sorry, to somehow let the body produce antigens. And that will then fight that whatever stuff was put in your body. So let's say it's a strain of bacteria or virus that is injected, but it's a weak one. It's just that to stimulate the body, to make sure
your body
the
has
body
an immune response.
Right.
Yeah.
That immune response is it's memory. It remains in your body. Now the body registers the memory of that of that specific microbe that was put in your body. When you get it, the live one now, not the one that was fact in the lab, no, the live one, it fights it because there is memory of that disease having entered your body. But that takes time, Yeah. So people just literally were like, no herd immunity. The story of herd immunity is a lie. This doesn't happen. Then listen, you giving me a vaccine does not mean that it's going to work like the way I took a tablet from CVS.
Right.
And then tomorrow I see results, But the way it was injected, it was just like the way we buy over-the-counter stuff. No, it takes time for you to build immunity so you're able to actually fight against the disease. So to me, at that point, that was not science, And this is not conspiracy theory. Anybody that has a little bit of science, understanding of science, will reach this conclusion. The vaccine was actually literally being applied as though it was the generic medicine that we buy and take.
Yeah, like a Tylenol.
Like Tylenol, yes.
Yeah.
But that's not how the vaccine actually responds. It's different.
I don't know. There's a lot smarter people than me that got a lot of that wrong. And I was one of the few people that was like, this is not how the body works.
Right.
And you know how it works, and no one listened to you.
Nobody would listen. It was just who are you? Do you have an MD at the end of your name?
Then we don't listen to you.
Right? What's your scientific background?
Hey, your house is on fire.
Are you a researcher?
You're not a firefighter. You can't tell me if the house is on fire.
Right. Exactly. But listen, I don't know if I did ask any of those, old friends that I went to school with a little bit of biology and everything. This is spot on. It's easy.
I think you got a better education in the refugee camp than most of the kids in the public school around here, which is sad.
It was good. That I'll tell you.
So you wanted to talk to me about the claims of what is going on in South Africa.
In South Africa, yeah.
Just to give people get up to speed, I'm going to give you my interpretation of it.
Absolutely.
And then we'll see if I get it right or somewhere in the middle. I'm not a scholar of South Africa.
You don't have to be.
That's true. I also don't need to be a virologist to understand how vaccinations work. So there seems to be some sort of political movement in South Africa after apartheid and Nelson Mandela. And, I've been looking at this for a few years. I've been aware of it for a few years. I deplore racism as it's conveyed in any shape or form. There's no it's appalling to just dislike someone for how they look.
Right.
The The problem I have with racism is a lot of people think that, number one, I don't think it's real. I believe a prejudice is real. I don't believe that like children have this innate hate for someone who doesn't look the way they do.
Right.
I think that is an appalling assessment. But I also think that the idea of racism, as we've been told, isn't just white people against black people. It's every race, every culture is capable of it and has participated in it in the past for thousands of years. The way I understand racism is in slavery is that it was something that, if I'm not mistaken, the British were the first ones to kind of say, we're not gonna enslave people anymore, and then the Americans kind of followed suit after that, and then like the dominoes fell across the world. But there's still, to this day, there's more slavery in this world than there ever has been in the history of mankind, as far as we know. Open slave markets in Libya.
Oh yeah.
Crazy shit. China. And slavery is just oppression. If you don't have freedom, you're a slave. If somebody gets to tell you, if somebody forces you to do something through a penalty, that's slavery. What's going on in Africa is it seems like there seems to be some sort of fever of blaming white farmers for a lot of the problems in South Africa, insofar as there has been, if I'm not mistaken, hundreds of farmers that have been murdered in the last few years. Insofar as like they're doing, tributes to them. They're, I don't know if anybody saw the press conference with the president of South Africa, those white tributes of crosses for all the farmers that have lost their lives. Now, is it more nuanced than that? Probably, and that's why we're going to talk.
Right.
As I perceive, and so that to me is terrible. So anybody who hates anybody because of how they look, whether they're black, white, Asian, Native American, I don't care.
No one
it's
would
wrong.
take that. Yeah,
It's wrong.
absolutely. Yeah.
So how far off am I in my assessment of how I view it as generally as possible?
Right. So what's happening in South Africa? First of all, I don't know about the hundreds of thousands of.
No, I didn't say as hundreds or thousands.
Thousands
not hundreds
of
of
farmers.
thousands.
Yeah. A couple of farmers have been killed. I don't think it's a lot. And I think with this in South Africa, it's on both sides of the ratio spectrum, both black and white. The statistics I was talking about last time, looking at how many people died. I think only like 8 of the. I think it was I can't remember the exact number, but it was maybe 80 or something that they talked about, and only very few of them were actually white. And this is also, I think this is also somehow justified by the statistics itself. The whites in South Africa are only 20% of the population. So
in South Africa, white people are the minority.
They are the minority.
Okay.
Now, the problem is, I think with South Africa, you start all this with the coming of Jan van Riebeeck and a lot of these Dutch settlers from the Netherlands in 1652. Jan van Riebeeck arrives in South Africa.
How do you know this 1652? All right, keep going. You so know so much shit that I don't know.
I'm interested in the story, and I really wanted. I listen. There are a lot of people who just make stories up, but
Right.
it's a lot of work to sit down and try to find out the root cause of something. But the thing is, the reason why I go back to 1652 when Jan van Riebeeck arrives in South Africa with a lot of Dutch settlers is that that's where things go wrong. Because when they arrive, these guys are hungry for land. They wanted
Dutch
land.
are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as these people expand, just after that, you realize that the British are also going to take over places like Cape Town and it's like three-front war of a sort, because the British are against the local black folks, and they also against the Boers. They think they
What does Boer mean?
the Boer means farmer in Dutch.
So when they chant "kill the Boer,"
Kill the farmer.
kill the
So
farmer.
that song is also being taken out of context, because the song, it's actually a song of a song of struggle. It's like we don't like, let's say there's a group of people who hate Trump,
yeah.
they come up with a song or something. Now,
punch a Nazi, kill the fascist.
Something like that, you know? And then anybody has their own interpretation of the song. Does that song really mean that you should now go around and start killing Boers? No. But it's showing, it was a song that blacks used when they were trying to fight apartheid in the past. And apartheid was terrible, you know? Like black people went through a lot through apartheid, during apartheid. And, you know, some of these songs were, you know, songs of struggle, you know? Whether you actually go by exactly what it means, today, that's different, you know? And I think Malema himself, who, you know, encouraged people to sing the song, has come out to explain the real meaning behind them chanting that song. It has nothing to do with going around killing the Boers.
There will be a lot of people going like, yeah, right.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know? And people who do not know the history of South Africa. Because if you know that there was apartheid and blacks were really fighting for their own survival, you're like, okay. So today, if we are talking about expropriation of land, oh, where did that start? And that's why I usually like to go back to 1652 with Jan van Riebeeck and coming these people hungry for land. And you know, going back to the story of land, these two groups, the British and the Boers, went around signing what they call bogus treaties. And this bogus treaties is like Ushu is a traditional chief for the Congolese people in Scranton, but they almost own the whole of Lackawanna. So either the Boers or the British will come and like, hey, you know, would you please sign this piece of document, you know, this and this and that. Many of these people were illiterate, so they did not read the document in detail. They
couldn't have anybody interpret it for them.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, people usually miss the fine print. So these stupid chiefs, and you know, sorry, I have to call them stupid, but they were signing things they did not seem to understand.
They were ignorant.
Maybe that's a nice way to put it. So they signed off on a lot of land, and the Boers picked up the land, and just like the British did the same thing. So
they took advantage of them.
They took advantage of that, yes. Yeah. You know, so what happens is the black folks are pushed into the northern parts of the country, and then to some other parts of the country, and end up in places which by the American standards would be reservations for the Indians, you know, but the blacks were put in places called the Bantustans. So Bantustans were like, you know, a reservation for black people in South Africa, and they built houses in some places. And
but that's their home country too.
It's their home country.
Yeah,
you know. So I think to me, I think this was a mistake on behalf of the Boers and the British. They should have found a way, you know, back then to resolve this issue, but it wasn't resolved because people were just hungry for land, for their cattle and the goats and for the farms of corn and everything, you know. So I think being extremely ambitious on the land part has led to what we now see today, which Malema and the rest are calling for, you know, expropriation of land without compensation. Now, Malema is a little aggressive with his plan.
Now, who's Malema? He's the president?
Julius Malema is the president and the commander-in-chief of the EFF, which is a political party in South Africa, the Economic Freedom Fighters.
So they'd be the equivalent to like Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians
they're more
in
like,
Parliament?
They're more like distribution of resources back to people and stuff like that. So it's a lot of socialist, communist in nature. But they call
the group
themselves,
is socialist and communist in nature.
Of a sort, yes. Well, they read Karl Marx. You know, those are their books.
So the ones saying
books.
kill the Boer are the same ones that read Karl Marx.
Yes.
Do you see where people get like
Das Kapital?
yeah. Do you see where people are like, I don't know if it's just a song. It seems like an order. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, EFF is all gangster, you know.
So now they're Marxist, communist, and gangsters. But when they say kill the Boer, it's like, don't listen to that.
They're very aggressive in fighting for the rights of blacks, you know. There are some good things about
That's
the
commendable.
EFF.
You should always do that. But.
Right. There are some good things about the EFF and the things where they really go off the script. And I think, you know, somehow they have to be reminded that, you know, communism has not worked in a lot of places, and socialism has also not worked in a lot of places. And one of my reasons, and this is just me in my opinion, I think one of the reasons why we continue to be poor in Africa is also because we are so communist in nature. Not communist to a sense of like what the Chinese were doing back then.
Yeah, or the Russians.
We're very communal in how we do things, you know. Ushu is receiving a check. It's like it's for the whole village, you know. When Ushu graduates from the university and is going to get a nice job, and it's like the whole village has won a jackpot, you know what I mean? So
really,
do you know what I mean? So that's when you get to know who the uncles are, who the aunties are, who the the nephews and everybody is, the entire extended family, and even beyond the extended family. So somebody's not going to sleep hungry knowing Ushu has a nice job. You know what I mean? So a nephew is not going to fail to go to school knowing Ushu's got a nice job. He's got to pay for my school fees.
Do they just assume that?
I don't think it's an assumption. They think it's
Is it a cultural thing where it's expected?
It's expected, that because I'm doing well, I have to provide for the other ones. So you cannot save. How do you save then? If you own a house, everybody else wants to come and just live in the house.
So there's no generational wealth.
How do you do that? How do you build wealth like that? Your money is for the entire village.
And what's everybody in the village do? Nothing?
It encourages laziness.
Really?
Do you know what I mean? So listen, I don't know, but
it encourages it.
It encourages it. So, and I'm trying to relate this to the whole South African story because that's what the EFF is. They encourage distribution of resources, and so they do some good things, but also there are places where they go a little off the script, and that's where they get in trouble. Do I think that song is appropriate? I think because of multiple interpretations and people not understanding the history of the country itself, there is a high chance people will be like, "Oh, this is dangerous." You're literally advocating for the killing of a group of people. But so when you have a country whose minority, 20% of the country owns the majority of the land.
Yeah.
So the 20% of white folks in South Africa own over 70% of the land in South Africa. What do you expect of all those Aboriginal black folks who do not have even a little bit of land to survive on?
Where are they living?
They're living like squatters. I mean, they're renting out small. If you go to Bantustans, it's even terrible. I'll encourage you. I think when we're done, look up for some Bantustans in South Africa, on YouTube and try to watch some of those videos. The kind of lives in these places is just terrible.
Is it like shanty towns?
Shanty towns, yes. Shanty towns. A lot of people, a lot of kids. It's a lot of sex and drugs and
just human misery.
Correct. And hopelessness as a result.
Yeah.
Land is tied into wealth. Anybody that controls land controls wealth. So if you do not own land, there is a high chance you're poor. I don't care what you think about it. Because if you own a piece of property, it's definitely on a piece of land. If you're doing business, that business is definitely on a piece of land. The majority of the people, the wealthy people in any given society, they are usually landowners, Yep. So I think if you do not have control over land, if you do not have any piece of land to survive on, then you're probably paying rent to someone else, or you're surviving on a certain form of agreement where if you break that agreement, then you're kicked out of that, that whatever, if it's a small room or anything you're living on. So it leaves you vulnerable. So Malema is proposing that, the government should, be aggressive and take all the land from the Boers and all that. What President Ramaphosa and ANC are proposing is a lot more, favorable plan where they're like, okay, I guess we have to be nice to the Boers. Can they give some land to some, people, so people can also have, a little bit of that land. And there's pushback,
from the farmers.
From the farmers, yeah, because they're like, my grandfather owned this piece of land. My father owned it. I own it. This is generational land. Why would you want to take it from us? And that's, I think, where the problem is.
And I really don't want to give it to people who might want to kill me.
Right. There is no consensus on how to distribute the land back to certain people, And the other issue with the Boers too, they are also Boers who have literally neglected some of their farms. They're not taking care of these farms and they just, abandoned. How do you deal with that?
I don't know.
So instead of finding a better solution, people are resorting to very racist measures, And so, I think that's where the problem is.
What happened with the Truth and Reconciliation stuff? Wasn't that supposed to kind of bridge the divide a little bit?
Right. I think the Truth and Reconciliation Commission did a great job. I think people came out and talked, and white folks and black folks sat down, a majority of them, and they shared their stories, and people asked for forgiveness from each other. And I think it was great. But unfortunately, I think with the issue of distribution of resources like land itself, the wealth gap between the rich and the poor is also so big in South Africa. This is why we're having all these issues,
The income gap.
The income gap, correct.
Now, is that primarily the black population, or is there the white population in there? Because you and I had this conversation, right? It's not about race; it's about poverty.
Correct. And listen, we're here to tell the truth. We're not here to just make things up. Yes, and I think that's my problem. I think every time we want to talk about poverty and wealth, the poor and the rich, we tend to bring it, and the wealthy, by the way, and we tend to bring it back to skin color. Oh, it's the white folks and it's the black folks. Motsepe, the richest guy in that country, by the way, just for the record, is black. He has a lot of money.
Probably a lot of control and power too.
Correct. And he's very close to people in power. The president Ramaphosa, he's not a poor guy.
Well, usually you
He's
don't get to
very
that
wealthy.
position by being poor.
Correct. The ANC has a lot of those people with money. A lot of them are also black. Just for the record too, the ANC has a lot of rich white people in the party too. So it's even the parties are not like divided based on race.
So it's all
The EFF, the people, Malema, he has some white people behind him too. The one who is singing
Kill the Boer guy?
Kill the Boer. Yeah.
I bet you he's not poor.
No, he's not. You cannot run a political party in Africa when you're broke.
I mean, I'm starting to see over the last few years like the similarities in behavior amongst different countries and how it boils down to like this human thing where it's like you have either the oppressors or the oppressed or the conquerors or the conquered.
Right.
And I think it works everywhere. I think that's the game. I think the game is no matter what political party, whatever, you have to look. If there's more than one political party, the other political party is obviously to some degree going to look at them as the enemy.
Right.
So, and it's not really about, I think America was the place where it was like, yeah, we can agree, but we have to believe in these certain things that separate us from everybody else, every other country that is oppressive or, do you know what I mean?
Right. So going back to that point of poverty. So in South Africa, by the way, no one talks about this, but there's also a section of white people who are very poor. And I'm not trying to make this up. They're also living in, packs, in open packs. These are very poor white people.
And do they come from the Dutch or the British?
A lot of them are of the Boer descent. They're Dutch.
And what, they just squandered all of their...
You lost a job in Cape Town, you end up in some park, start living in this small, how do you call these houses when you go camping,
like a tent?
Yeah, you start living in a tent, or in an open, place somewhere. And we're not talking about one family. It's a lot of white folks, who are really struggling there too. So the country has also a poverty problem with not just black people, but also white people.
Is anybody addressing that?
No. So, I told you about the affirmative action in South Africa. They're looking at bringing black folks into some jobs. Even judges, for example. There are a lot of white judges and magistrates, and they're trying to bridge the gap. So they're trying to bring in more black judges. I think the plan was to get
them getting that position based on their skin color is in of itself racist.
Correct. I completely agree. Yeah. These are very sensitive issues. And again, there are people who are like, we don't have enough black judges. We should get some black judges in there. Jobs too. These days, we go apply for a job, like I told you. You and maybe, two other white folks, and we go and maybe the company has more white folks in it. And they're like, sorry, Maki probably has more experience in school, but we're going to go with Ushu because, the colors have to be represented in that company, So I get the job, not because of experience, but because they're trying to get the numbers of black folks working in a given company. So that's what is leading up to some white folks losing jobs and also ending up in these parks and sleeping in tents.
So in the United States, that would be known as DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, where the hiring practices are based on skin color. Because this is why a lot of people on the conservative side have a problem with that. Because it's like, we should hire the best person for the job. I don't care if they're white, black, Asian, doesn't matter.
Yeah. So
if it disproportionately
based on merit,
Correct.
based on merit, and I think the question is how do you then do that effectively? Because let's say
everything goes to shit afterwards because you're not hiring the best people. You're not
True.
employing the best people.
So at the same time, here's what's going to happen. Let's say one population is completely disadvantaged, and you end up having issues with maybe just one section of the society having access to certain things and opportunities, and the other one is not because it's to some extent having a disadvantage. How do you do that? I think there's a better way to do it. And I'm not saying merit is a bad thing. I told you how I was disappointed when I lost the scholarship because of my last name. And somebody else who probably did not have, my academic results got the scholarship, and I did not get it just because of my last name.
Why did that happen?
I think tribalism, people thinking, like I said, these guys looked at my result slip from school. I said, well, he did well. Looked at my face, smiled, and then told the other guy. He did not know I knew their language. He told the guy, "Uyu namkari wachu." In Kinyarwanda, it means this one is not ours. Mukelo is from where? Just like that.
So that's like your last name for like the Irish being like McDonald or O'Hearn, or like that's my mom's, like how like the Irish have like the apostrophe and like there's a way to tell, like,
O'Hare or something.
Yeah. So is that the same thing?
Right. So from your last name, they know who you are.
Holy shit.
So if you're not part of the club, if you're not from the same tribe as people who run the organization or who run whatever the company or something, you're not going to get the benefits that you're entitled to, even when you merit.
So that's racism too, in a way.
It's some form of segregation, discrimination of a sort,
Yes.
And it's, I don't know, how do you resolve that?
It's definitely discrimination, maybe not racism.
Now, when you also happen to, and this is very complicated, when you happen to have a group of people who are, let's say, not focusing on getting their kids to school and getting the right education, and how do you get them into certain industries if that's not what they're doing, Do you just cut off other people and try to be like, hey, since we need this kind of skin shed, let's just get these people here, like you're saying, you're gonna end up with shady people who will not know what to do, and then they run the company down.
That's my that's my biggest problem. That like the question that I have the most is like, okay, so if you decide today that it's totally merit based, which I think it should be from the start, the people who think that like they deserve it or that they're owed it, they're not gonna be motivated to try to do better. They're just going to continue to be victims. They're going to continue to be like, they're going to get angry.
Yeah.
They're going to get really angry.
Yeah.
And the thing that sucks about it is like, I knew a lot of people who grew up like poor. I was like, upper middle class a little bit. Like my family owned a business. I was really fortunate. I'm really grateful for what happened.
Right.
And I knew a lot of people who were a lot worse off than I was, who ended up doing amazing things.
Right.
And I don't know what magic ingredient needs to be conveyed or given to people for them to do that.
Now, listen, bro, I think we can't make this very difficult. It all comes down to how we look at each other, Okay. As long as we continue looking at each other in the lens of skin color, if I look at you and all I see in you is just you're white, and you look at me and just black, what else are we looking into, when we look at each other? What else do we look at? If it just ends at skin color, we will continue to have this problem. Because if there is no looking at skin color in South Africa, they'll all be looking at each other as South Africans, right? And if you all look at each other as South Africans, it doesn't matter who gets the job.
We're all going to help each other.
Right.
Yeah.
But as long as we continue to have that divide, we will never resolve that. Because every time you're doing something, it comes down to he's white, he's black, he's Asian. Can you move? You cannot. In Rwanda, these guys took up machetes and started cutting off each other's heads off. Why? Because somebody told them that these people would, like longer noses, they look like this, and, they're the problem.
It was as simple as that. Just a facial.
Right.
It wasn't even.
Right.
It wasn't even skin color. It was a facial structure.
Facial structure, physiognomy. How do these tall people, they think you guys are stupid. Even the king doesn't respect you guys. You're the majority. Like, why do you let them just, step on your heads? So the Belgians put that stuff in the Hutus, and the Hutus are like, yeah, 80% of the country is ours. These guys are only 14%. How do they roll over us? We should fight them. First of all, they were not from here. They came from somewhere else. They found us here. We're Bantu. These guys are not Bantu. And the story just grows up into something weird, But what's happening right now is there's a lot of intermarriages, and I'm really hoping that the intermarriages continue in that country, because that's going to breach, like everybody else is all going to look like Tutsi or something, and no more physiognomical differences among the people. And at that point, I guess they won't ever have issues of Hutus and Tutsis in the country anymore.
They will find a new way to be divisive. There will always be a new way to divide.
I think there's a metamorphosis in in
A
human
metamorphosis?
hatred.
Okay.
It just transforms from one form to the other. From a caterpillar to a housefly.
Right.
Like you're saying, we move from one problem to the other.
What do you feel about race in America?
Well, race also, when I'm talking about transitioning, it's moved from maybe the black, white to we now have the gay transgender movement, which is another thing, and it's taken fire, But racism in this country, first of all, I have to say this. If you really think people of African descent are really hated by white people, I don't think today, if we talk about racism, white people come even close. If you want to see where blacks are really treated like pigs, like animals, you should go to the Arab world.
Really?
The Arabs treat black people like shit.
Really?
And I'm not making this up. I have friends who have gone for house, how's it called? We call them house girls. These people who walk in people's houses, they clean clothes and all that.
Like a maid,
like a maid of a sort,
housekeeper.
They've gone to a lot of places: Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. You know what I mean? I can name them. They come back telling us weird stories. I actually had one who called me on the phone. I was like, "Hey, Ushu, can you guys mobilize some money so I can get out of this place?" That was in Oman.
Really?
They tie the girl up. She's treated like an animal. She's not allowed to leave. They hold on to her passport.
The Arabs did this.
Yes. Are you kidding me? Was that in the US?
No.
But here I can go all gangster and do whatever I want. I can even have an argument with a policeman. There is a high chance maybe the policeman may be fucked up and shoots me, for a reason. But there, you don't play around with stuff. This is just a family, husband and a wife treating you like shit. And maybe their kids too.
And obviously they're a little bit wealthy.
No one talks about that. What about the caste system in India?
Oh, that's brutal.
Some Indians have a lot of companies in Africa. They run small companies, small, medium businesses, Do you know how they treat black people? You should ask my father. We came from Uganda. There are a lot of Indians in Uganda. They run small companies there. They spit in faces of black people. They don't pay black people.
Really?
What about the Chinese who bring their companies in Africa? And they bring 100 Chinese more people to work because they cannot hire the poor black people. And the governments and our leaders sign off on that. They bring a lot of Chinese to work. And, at the end of the day, there comes arguments. Why did they bring 100 Chinese people to work when we have a lot of black people with no jobs here? Tell me what that is. Because they think, these black people cannot do the job. We should bring our own. It has nothing to do with a skill, because you can't tell me carrying a stone, anybody can carry a stone on a road construction. Do you need a Chinese guy from, Wanzhou to come with you to Uganda to build a road?
Yeah, he's the best.
I know a lot of people who can carry a lot of stones around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently 300-pound luggage.
Oh my
for
God.
miles.
And they happen to be black, So why do you do that? There are a lot of places with terrible racism. So sometimes to me, when people talk about racism in this country, you should also have the courage to say, we've come a long way and things are better. Don't start talking like we're in the 50s or we're in the 1600s, No, things have come a long way. This country, compared to a lot of these other places I've told you, this is way better. This is not to make the story up.
Why is it so hard to say that? Why is it so hard to push back against it and be like...
Like I said, in India, the caste system, it's a form of racism no one talks about. And I feel
it's happening here.
It happens in Scranton. Yes. I happen to have a friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name. He lives out in Nanticoke. He has some connections to some organizations here. He was flying out. He was on a plane, and some guy happened to treat an older lady who probably had a name in his mind was a fucked up name, last name. And he did not like the older lady. And to me, it's like, This is an older person. I have to treat, the older person with dignity and respect.
Yeah.
It's not just a cultural thing. It's just the way things have to be. You have to respect elders. This lady received a terrible treatment from this young Indian guy who thought, she was nothing because of her last name. But no one talks about this. It all comes down to, these white people, they hate black people. Have you seen where black people are actually hated as we speak today? Have you seen the caste system in some societies like in India? There are places where things are really terrible, and I think this country has come a long way. That's how I would put it.
Why does it seem like it's the worst place on earth to the people who are, you know what I mean? Like Morgan Freeman said, if you want to get rid of racism, stop talking about it.
Right. And I agreed. I saw that clip too. I agreed with him. Yes. And listen, we have, let's say, the Congolese community here in Scranton. 80% of our people are from one unique tribe, the Bambi. They speak the same language, same culture, same people. They think, at some point they did not like other people and had to push,
At some point they didn't like other people.
They didn't like other people. And some, elements of these tribesmen, still don't like other people. But you have to push. If you're in a position of leadership, your number one priority is not to split people, but to try to bring them together. I speak a lot of languages, including Kinyarwanda. They did not like people who spoke Kinyarwanda, and they ended up, selling stories that these people are not Congolese and all that. It wasn't based on facts. I know the history of our country. We've talked about it here. And I know that, Kinyarwanda speaking people are one of the people in that country. All this goes down to 1884, 1885 Berlin Conference, where Africa was partitioned. It was real estate deal, Louisiana Purchase 2.0. People cut pieces, French West Africa, the Germans got SWAPO, Southwest Africa.
And nobody talked to the Africans about it.
Tanganyika. Yeah, of course. These gangsters sat in Berlin and, under the leadership of Otto von Bismarck, people like Prince von Metternich, and the French delegates and British delegates, everybody was, they sat on the table and decided we are splitting this thing into small pieces for everybody, and that's how it was, they cut these boundaries in places where they're splitting kingdoms into two pieces. So the kingdom of Rwanda was very powerful, and cultures too, so you have people going this way into the present day Democratic Republic of Congo and others going into the Republic of Rwanda. These are people, the same culture, same traditions. They were under the same leadership of the Mwami of Rwanda, but they find themselves on different sides of the border. This is way before we even got independence in 1960. So do you really tell me these guys finding themselves across the border, they're not Congolese because, their counterparts in Rwanda? Are you kidding me? Do you really understand that there is a difference between people, someone being a Munyarwanda, but Congolese nationality, of Congolese nationality, and also being a Munyarwanda of Rwanda nationality? These are two different things. There is a present-day Republic of Rwanda, which is a sovereign country, and the DRC, a sovereign country, and people, regardless of what tribe or ethnic group they belong to, if they belong to one side of the border, they can either be Congolese, or if they belong to the other side of the border, they're Rwandans. People seem not to understand this, political history, and they end up making stories up. And this is very dangerous because people have died as a result. We're fighting a war in Eastern Congo today, which is as a result of borderlessness. The Congo letting ethnic Hutus fleeing, the fighting in Rwanda into the Congo. Some of them remnants of the former government's army and coming into the country with guns. So we're paying a price for that, because it looks like in 1984, the genocide shifted from Rwanda to the Congo. And that's what is happening right now. So these are very dangerous things, but not trying to deviate from the story. About racism in this country and also racism in a lot of other places.
Yeah, but it explains it. So
it explains it, it really explains it. So people really have to be careful because if your thing is in the US, people are so racist. These white people hate us. You should try other places. If you really think things are horrible here, find other places.
Have you ever ran into a white person who was like, I hate you, fuck you?
No, but not like that. We also not naive. There are people who will hate you and will not say it in your face.
I think people who hate other people just based if they don't know them, it's ignorance and prejudice.
Correct. There is a lot of that
too. They have a preconceived idea in their head that probably it's. When I was growing up and the whole, I was a Democrat and I was very like pro gay.
Very pro gay.
I was very pro like. if you want to do what you want to do, like
Yeah.
just don't hurt kids or animals. Like I really don't care.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you do in the privacy of your own home. And it was always the funny thing where it was like, and then the Republican had the gay kid, and he's like, well, I guess I don't hate gays.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought that like that was a nice little microcosm to be like, don't judge until you talk to the person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you want to talk to the person and they're an absolute piece of shit, it doesn't matter what color or sexual preference they are. They're just a dick.
Right.
You know, and not all people need to get along all the time.
Right.
You know, differences are good. If you didn't have differences, you wouldn't have progress because there's no discussion.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you something. You know, I've seen a lot of brothers who are married to white girls. You know.
Well, that's
no, hold on.
That's a unicorn.
I have a point. I have a point right here. You know what the Indians do in Uganda? I'll give you a very good example. The Indians do once they have a daughter, right? And once she grows and she's into the whole puberty where she can start looking around, they get the girl and fly her back to India. Go stay there.
Because they don't want the intermixing.
See that?
Yeah.
See that? So I mean, there are a lot of examples to look at. If you really think
Like if
things
a
are
white
terrible in
white
this
people
country,
in this country did that, you'd hear about it every night on the news.
yeah. First of all,
Every night.
yeah. Listen, I know a lot of white folks who go and buy land, and not just like vacation or something. They really go and stay. They go to Kenya. They go to Tanzania, which is also relatively stable.
They buy land in Africa.
They mingle with the community, and if they run a company, all black people working for the white guy's company, they're so happy because they take care of them. These companies are audited. They, people come in to make sure that things are good, and including how they treat their, the employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, but do you think Indian companies are getting audited? Do you think the Arab companies there are getting audited? Do they really care?
Why aren't they getting audited? Why is
Because
it only the white company getting audited?
Well, it's up to you who runs the business. It's a culture, It's sometimes when we talk about the West and the influence in Africa, to some extent, it's not as terrible as people want to put it. And I would be more cautious of these other folks. Like I told you, my position on the deal that Trump was trying to sign with the government on the minerals. And I said, well, I want American companies to get in because people will have some respect, But when you have the Chinese people, these people are just aggressive and they're after the money. They don't care about anything, Do American companies also do damage, to the environment and all that? Absolutely, But when it comes to treating people, I'm talking about treating black people. The white folks have reached a point where they don't, it's not like the way it was in the past. They don't continue to look at black people as useless people, as animals. That is something of the past. Are there some white people who still think like that? Absolutely. Are there black people who are prejudiced against white people? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Like at that point, people have to be careful. In this country, things have really gone too far better than the way it was in the past. And there are a lot of examples where you can look at and compare. And I think if you're blaming America so much, I want you to pause and think twice.
Well, I mean, there's a huge problem with I hate to say it, but like if white men are told that they're awful, terrible people, and they're the reason for suffering of so many people, and these white men, and I'm just looking at it as like tall men. I'm just saying like white men as in tall men or short men or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not used to be like a racial thing, but that's the group that's being targeted. And what do you expect them to do? Like, how do you expect them to react eventually?
Right. So bro, listen, that comes down to patriarchy. And I think it's so naive to think patriarchy is just with white folks. Like, give me a break. I come from a family, from a tribe that is extremely patrilineal. My sister is younger than me, when you go to tradition and culture, So she can decide, but at the end of the day, I'm making the final word.
So in your culture, so like if your sister, okay, explain it to me.
Listen, so the men run the show.
Okay.
When you're born as a child, you belong to your father.
Okay.
So if I want land, I want resources, it's my father's side. And we don't call them uncles. They're all your fathers from your father's side.
Oh, really?
So my father's big brother is also my father, my big father. Bamukuwa in Swahili, my big father. My father's younger brother is my small father.
Okay.
He's also father.
Yeah.
We don't call them uncles. Uncles are just from the mom's side. So
really?
Yes.
This is amazing.
Right. So, there's a lot of, patriarchy in a lot of African societies, this is not a white people thing. It's universal.
Yeah, when
You
they're
know?
like, fuck the patriarchy, it's
Yeah, but it's universal. It's everywhere, except for one tribe. I know one tribe for sure in Congo, the Bakongo. They are matrilineal. So, if you have a daughter, it's like, yay, I got a daughter. If you got a boy, fuck that boy, Stuff like that, They don't care about the boys. It's the girls. It's the women that run the show. It's just one tribe. There is so much into
but for the most part, it's all patriarchy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah. 99% of the people, they are patrilineal. That's, the way things are run. So if we talk about that, it comes down to the men are the problem, So you cannot choose one specific race and say, these white guys. No. What about you guys, And I'm giving an example of a specific tribe. I'm Lega, I know about my tribe. We're so patrilineal. Everything is, patriarchy.
Is that all respected though? Is it all like...
Sometimes things go too far. Listen, I'm I went to school. I have some understanding of certain things. There are people who go, all gangster. It's like, the women are trash and all that. We have a bunch of people like that.
Women give life and nurture and...
Absolutely. But that's not how these people treat women, I've told you about the marriages here and how when we go to these African traditional, marriage ceremonies, it's like people bargaining over a goat or a piece of land to buy, and she has no say into that.
How do you feel? Like, how do you think that, like, are there some that willingly are okay with it and then some that aren't okay with it?
So you've been raised in a family that, you've seen everybody get married like that.
Yeah.
You're not going to question it.
It's just expected.
It's expected, at some point you're getting married and we're getting the money.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It comes down to, it's like a business. But you see the point I'm trying to make? Patriarchy, the men control the stuff. It's not a one race thing. It's universal. It's everywhere. And I think to some extent, some of us who come from Africa and some tribes, it's a little rough. Women are treated as second-class citizens. And I hope a lot of people come out and to say stuff like this because it's like you said, to some extent, we have to come back and be like, hey, you know what? Women give life.
I heard somebody explain it one time where like men and women are supposed to be different because they're complementary. They're two parts of a whole. Like, in other words, like together, that's the most amazing thing. Apart, they're not as strong as they are together.
Right. So one thing I come down to, this is my personal opinion of the whole thing. Do I think women actually have to be, let's say, like in a family, like I don't think my wife should be the leader in the house. But I also highly believe that I have to respect my wife. I have to make sure that her opinion counts.
Sure.
But the leadership still has to be with the man. Whether you're biblical, I think you can agree with me on that. But also if you're historical, maybe you may have some issues with that. But to me, I'm saying this, as a tribesman belonging to a specific tribe, there is nothing wrong with that. So is patriarchy completely bad? No, it's not. There's some certain elements of patriarchy that are good, that need to be valued and respected, but there are also portions that are a little toxic, and that's why I don't agree.
One of my wife's friends said something to me once. She goes, women want to be in charge of everything, and they want until there's a spider in the bedroom or there's a noise downstairs.
Yeah.
The one that goes to that is the man.
Yeah.
So like at the end of the day, is it an illusion of power that the women want, or is it a legitimate, some things are just the way they are, and it's worked forever.
Yeah.
Like women don't go to war.
Right.
Unless there's one tribe that you have in Africa, they might go to war. But most,
yeah, some tribes do. Yes.
Throughout the history of the Alexander the Great's battles, Genghis Khan, it wasn't the women. It was always the men, and the men were there to. If everything was equal, the women would be there. And I'm not that doesn't mean women are lesser than men. Can't have babies.
Yes.
Men can't nurture and be amazing with children the way that women can be.
Yeah, and in some of these,
and we don't sustain life through.
We talked about rituals. There are all kinds of rituals, including some purification rituals. And what's funny, is some rituals can only be done with the presence of a woman. You know, we believe that women, exhibit certain powers.
I agree with that.
You know, there is a ritual. I don't want to get into details, but let's say your wife, wakes up in the morning. You know, she stands up. You know, how do you say that? She like widens her stances, and you cross. You you pass underneath her her legs and stuff. You know,
like an archway of legs.
When she pees in the morning, that pee is can be used for certain things.
Did not know that.
I don't want to get into some graphics, but hey, you can do a lot with your wife.
Can you imagine Americans being like, honey, did you capture your pee this morning?
That's not for lab work.
No, that's for something I don't even want to know. But what the crazy thing is, it probably works, whatever it is.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the things we can talk about here that are weird, but women have to be involved in order for these things to work. And we're talking about African, traditional beliefs.
I think
witchcraft and
so
women are very powerful.
I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. There's the race division, the sexes division. Where it's like it's unnecessary because everything's so complementary and it's used as like this divisive thing.
Everything is complementary.
Just to keep strife.
Right.
To keep everybody mad at each other. Okay, so let's say in South Africa, right? The people who are benefiting financially or politically power, they love the fact that everybody's fighting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it distracts from whatever the hell they're doing.
Right.
And once the people when the people realize that they're getting screwed by people in power who are telling them think this way, or these people are your enemy, or this group is your enemy. Most of the time, it's really not that way, and it's a story told.
Yeah.
To continue division or add new division.
Yeah.
I never thought trans was going to be a divisive topic. I never thought it would be a dividing line.
It's become one.
Yeah, but now there's in 2000. I think it was 2008 when they codified gay marriage. Right. My whole thing was back then. I was like, good. Everyone now has the ability to be as miserable as everybody else, right? And I thought that it was going to end at that. And then all of a sudden, there was all these different genders that came in where it's like, oh, you can now claim oppression forever.
Right.
Because, look, once everybody is legitimately treated equal, there is no more oppression.
There is no more oppression. And there are people who survive. They're like parasites. They survive on power. And power is best maintained through divisiveness.
Always.
It's
how the Nazis did it. It's how the Bolsheviks did it.
Right. So you really have to come up with a story that really helps you keep the division. That also plays with emotions of people.
What do you call it? Emotional?
Works. I call it emotional business. It's emotional business. There are people who are heavily invested in that business, that kind of business. And I think that's what we see every day. It has nothing to do with the reality, but certain groups of people. I was watching something where someone was arguing that even the idea of democracy in this country, it's just it's something you can argue that it doesn't exist.
Oh, I can see that argument.
There is a group of people who are in control. They claim to belong to a certain group of party, but within that party, there's a subdivision of people with money, and they make the final decisions and everything. And it comes down to not the ordinary people like you and I, deciding who is gonna, end up in that White House, for example, And I think that's a problem, when people start making arguments like that. Some of this argument is a little persuasive, but there is some truth to it,
Well, when your choice is, do you know who George Carlin was? He was a comedian.
Yes, I've watched him. He's so funny.
The illusion of choice.
Yeah, sorry, I'll text here quick.
Who you texting?
Somebody's driving me crazy.
It's none of my business. Is it somebody showing you their wife's pee this morning?
No. I don't know about that.
So what George Carlin said, it's the illusion of choice. You have two political parties who get to tell you what to do. These are your choices. And I think that is an illusion of choice. And that those two political parties, a lot of people think I'm a terrible racist, Nazi, fascist.
Wow.
Because I left the Democrat Party. But it's just, so my buddy does all these political things, and he's done national politics. And you know the conventions, the Republican conventions, the Democrat conventions.
Yes.
He always said to me, he goes, Republican convention, Democrat convention, it's all the same sponsors. So it's all like AT&T, Comcast, Dell, whoever the hell is going to be sponsoring it. They're at the same places. The banks, brought to you by Pfizer. Man, you have a lot of texting to do.
You know what I do every day.
It's exhausting.
I take care of people. Yeah, go ahead. I'm not focused.
I'm not focused. So I think that like when you have two choices, that isn't a choice.
Yeah.
You know, so if when you break things down into these binaries, there's an illusion of choice. Like political parties, like there should be more political parties in the United States.
Yeah.
But only two have the power. So either 4 years from now you're gonna have a Democrat, or 4 years from now you're gonna have a Republican. You're never gonna have. I find it very hard to believe that you'll ever have like an independent or a Green Party or a Libertarian or anything like that, because these two parties have total control over everything.
Yeah, because the society is now running just like a computer, you know?
Yes.
On base 2.
Yes.
0 and 1.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't know what to tell you, bro. I think
but you were talking about like you said that there are people that can make an argument that democracy
it's an illusion.
is an illusion.
Yes, it's an illusion.
And I was kind of going on that point.
Yeah. It's an
That's what aggravates me, if it really is an illusion.
But what do you think though?
I think you're probably right.
It's an illusion.
Well, you don't elect your officials, you select them. You're given in America, it's not supposed to be these choices in the multiple choice question. It's supposed to be whatever the fuck you want it to be. And in a country that is supposedly governed by the people should have a say in that. Instead of going like, so like I do political stuff, right? You have to get so many signatures on a petition to get on the ballot. It should be everybody.
Yeah.
It should be anybody. If Ushu wants to run for mayor of Scranton,
just run.
Why do you have to jump through all these hoops?
Yeah.
Why do you have to do all this stuff? If the people have a choice, you get your message out there. If you're the best one, then
and within that process, they're very powerful people who are trying to outmaneuver you and remove you from, like get out. You know? Yeah. The people, I think, if you're very obsessed with power, you can also be somehow narcissistic, and I think that's where it becomes a problem. You know, are you just after? Is it after leadership? Is it leadership? Are you trying to change something for the good of everybody, or you just trying to be in there so you can control everybody?
That's always. I will never do work. I will never work with the person who wants to be powerful.
Right.
I will always work with the one who wants to help people.
I've always seen getting into stuff like that, any political office, to me, it has to come down to what change will I be able to push?
Sure. Or what destruction can I do just to make it better?
Ooh, yes, correct. Yeah, a distraction. The distraction can also be a good thing. Sometimes you destroy it to make things better.
Yep.
But unfortunately, I see people who get into things and maybe they become comfortable with a salary.
Sure.
With
or perks.
Whatever they can get. It has nothing to do with people, and that's not leadership.
I don't see. All I see the politicians around here doing, and I'm sure they'll argue with me, but like their sole focus all the time should be the betterment of their area or the people that they represent, right? And whether you're Democrat or Republican and you win an election, you're not a representative of the Democrats or the Republicans. You're a representative of everybody. You want everybody to be better. I see all these people around here now. All they're focused on is national issues that have nothing to do with the people around here. It has nothing to do with reducing the human suffering of people around here. Like the mayor does it, the state reps do it, the county commissioner does it, where he's just focused on like the hatred of somebody like Donald Trump or Republicans, and they're never focused on like they'll ostracize Republicans just because they're Republican. Kill the boar.
Kill the farmer.
See what I mean?
Yeah. So
they're bad.
Now,
no one sits and has a conversation.
We talked about in the other podcast when I was here before I went to Uganda, we talked about people not wanting to solve problems because problems have to continue to exist in order for them to continue to be relevant.
Yes.
If you resolve a problem, there is no job for you to do tomorrow.
Yeah. That's why they'll never cure cancer.
You know, and I think that's way dangerous because like that's in medicine.
Sure.
People will not want to, to find medicines and treatments for certain diseases because they want those, and the more people are hooked up to certain drug that doesn't actually treat you, but it gets you addicted to it. It's good for business. It brings in more money. So you don't want to resolve that problem. A lot of politicians too, and some folks who claim to be leaders are also, I think somehow troubled by that same problem. Or if I do this and I resolve this, then
I have nothing to run on again.
yeah, then what do I
There's
run
no more
on tomorrow?
problems.
Like racism has to continue to be a problem,
Or else I can't claim it.
Up to it. Yeah. If it's resolved, then you know what I mean? So people make up stories. You told me of the other guy who wanted to do research on, and was that like a crime or something? And he was given raw data. And then when he wanted to publish the story, the professor, people are like, you can't publish a story that, is against the mainstream story that...
I'll send you that.
You know what I mean? That's a problem. You want to resolve war in the Congo? There is definitely a solution to that conflict. No, it's not good for the UN and the NGOs involved in, getting everybody free food stamps there, so you have to maintain status quo to be relevant.
The people who are in a position to make effective change to stop whatever's going on in the Congo and Uganda, there's no incentive for them to do it.
Yeah.
Because then the money dries up.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there is hunger in a place, but there is also enough land for people to grow crops and have their own
feed
food.
everybody.
But then you run an organization whose sole purpose is to give people free food because, well, someone else is giving you money to pay yourself and pay people.
Yep.
Will you suggest that you actually get land and grow food that is enough for everybody, or you'll be like, yeah, no, let's just get some food and
we can make more money just
There's
giving
a lot
them,
of poverty. People need food. You opt for an option that sustains your relevance, and not actually what actually works. And that's very dangerous, bro.
It's led to dramatically evil increases in human suffering.
Right.
What like I have I don't know if you have an Xbox, but I have an Xbox and I play this game called Microsoft Flight Simulator. Sometimes I smoke a little bit of weed and then I just go fly.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times I fly around here and there's so much land.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much like farmable land.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we getting our food from other places?
That's the point.
Like, wouldn't it, like, everyone's concerned now about their grocery bill.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it reduce? Like, you're getting all your food local.
Yeah.
I'm a huge, you guys grow your gardens. I'm a huge proponent of that.
And if we had more land and we grew more, then the better.
How much land does it take?
We have excess land, excess food for maybe other people as well, But unfortunately, we are limited by the amount of land itself. But I'm extremely disturbed by, and I've never resolved this because it really bothers me so much. People want to sustain a certain level of human suffering for their own benefit.
Weird.
Some
would say evil.
It is evil, because they have to remain relevant because some people survive on that. There's a French saying that the suffering of others is the happiness. I don't know how to say. The suffering of others is happiness to
the rich person,
to others or something. Yeah, so someone's suffering is someone else's.
I understand the sentiment. Yeah. Like I think there's evil people out there who are like, yeah, all these people are fucking. When I saw, like, one of the big things in the 80s and the 90s was the suffering in Africa. Like, you'd see the kids with the bloated bellies and the flies on their face and that there's no food and there's no whatever. And, like, how did that become, like, teach them how did they forget how to grow food?
Yeah. Right.
How do they survive for generations? And then one generation, they're like, we forgot how to farm.
Yeah.
Something intervened. Whether it's some sort of country or some sort of corporation or something that intervened there and made it oppressive.
One thing for sure that I know is I think handouts can be very dangerous.
Totally.
because they come with an addiction. You know, people get addicted to being given free stuff.
Convenient.
Yes. You know, the addiction of convenience. I think people, if they become very comfortable with, you know, Maki's going to get me a bag of rice. Do you really think, you know, they're going to be out there thinking, well, let's go and try to find a place and dig on land and try to plant some rice?
Most won't.
Most people will not. And I think that's the problem. And unfortunately, it's from a continent where I come from. There are people who are literally addicted to, you know, all sorts of help from people. Yes, you know, and including our leadership too. Like I said last time, there are a lot of governments in Africa that are actually propped up by, you know, the Washington, D.C. money.
So it's the same psychopathy.
Yeah. The money that pays the bills for the president, the vice president, and everybody else, 50% of that money comes from D.C.
Well, it comes from us.
You know what I mean? Yeah, from the American people, of course.
Yeah,
not you say it, but from the
you go work your ass off, and then you send money to just pay warlords.
Yeah,
and,
to keep some government running. You know, and we have a lot of those governments. You know, so I don't approve of stuff like that, because that's where also you find a lot of hunger and all kinds of poverty. Because well, the people in power are guaranteed there is a check from the Office of Foreign Assistance. You know.
Did you like that they cut all the USAID money?
To some extent, yes. I think, and this is not just me. A lot of people, including the president of Uganda, was like, "Yeah, you know, good job." You know, people are addicted to free stuff, and sometimes, you know, people have to call it for what it is. It's not about feelings; it's about being practical, things that work. And unfortunately, there are people who somehow have developed an immunity against these realities. You know.
Developed an immunity against reality.
To actually what works. Yeah, they are very much against anything that works. Common sense. You know?
Hey, when's that event?
It's going to be June 29th, inshallah.
Did you guys solidify it yet or no?
No, the date is confirmed, yes.
So you're definitely going to be there?
Inshallah.
What type of food?
You know what you do. There's going to be a lot of fufu and, you know, meat and fish and plantain and, you know, it's all.
It was pretty good.
Fresh stuff, yes. And beans and yeah.
I can't wait to go back and eat again.
Inshallah. You know, you'll definitely be there. Don't miss out.
Okay, tell me about, and then you got to go, right?
Yeah, I got to go.
So tell me about the land in
Uganda. So, well, I did managed to get something, but the paperwork is in the process. So I have to go back. I'm hoping to get some time off from work so I can fly in for a week and, you know, sign off on some documents and come back. That way someone doesn't snatch the land from me.
You were telling me that you had to pay off people.
Yeah, there's a lot of bribing. So you put money in this pocket, you know, maybe in the pants too inside there, you know, everywhere in the socks. So every office you find somebody, hey, you know, we say speaking vernacular, you know.
You're speaking my language.
Yeah, you speak. So if you're in Scranton, you have to speak the Scranton accent, you know.
Okay.
That way Maki gets to get you to the next door, you know. But at the end of the day, all the pockets are empty. It may not be a lot, but you know, when you sum it up, it's decent amount.
So how much land are you looking at?
So no, well, what I got was has it an acre? You know, there they say it's a 3 series. It's enough land. You know, it may run from roughly here up to my place. You know my place.
Yeah.
From here,
that's a decent plot of land.
Yeah, it's enough to start with.
Can you also buy around it? If you choose to later in the future?
Yeah, so you know, there is poverty. There's a lot of poverty there. So if the neighbors are broke and they need some money quick,
they'll send you some land.
We'll talk about a couple of meters, you know, I added to my land. There is that possibility. The person who was helping me find the land actually told me that, you know, what happens, you know, you have to buy land in a place where there is room for expansion. Because I was looking for some place where we can build some vacation home. I got kids now here and my wife and my dad is getting, you know, older. He may want to go back at some point or do 6 months there, 6 months here. You know, it's good for his health, mental health too.
Being back in the
He's going to be with
homeland.
other people and be out more and not have to worry about paying, you know, bills and stuff, you know. So that's what we're looking at. But at the same time, we also want extra land for farming, you know, to put a couple of goats and cows and maybe plant some corn, and, you know. So yeah. You know?
So if your dad went over there, would he have to farm?
Yeah,
to some degree, like a garden.
To some degree, yeah, some gardening, you know, and even more. And it's in a rural place in the village. It's a lot off the township. So
do you guys milk goats?
Yeah.
Do you have goats around here? Does
No,
anybody have
here
a goat?
no, here no. We
I've never had
usually go
goat milk.
buy.
I've never had goat milk.
Oh, goat milk.
Yeah, I've always wanted goat milk.
I was told it's very healthy, you know, but
You've never had goat milk?
no, I haven't had it here. In Africa, yes, we have a lot of crossbred goats that really produce a lot of milk.
So we just bought goat milk like soap and shampoo.
Okay.
Like it's all made. It's surprised. I didn't realize that goat milk can make all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really good. Like I'm really surprised about all these things that are not like found in a grocery store that are. They actually feel better.
I guess we have to talk about, you know, health and how people really have to really focus on eating healthy foods. And we're not going corporate here. For us, when we come do this stuff, we're just talking and expressing ourselves, and it's a good thing. You know, we learn and and share some good stories too. I think when one thing I like about being in Africa is easy access to fresh foods. You know, you can easily go to an open market and buy something, go back, come back home, cook, eat. Tomorrow you don't have to worry about storing anything. Because tomorrow there's extra
just go back
fresh
to the market,
again.
yeah.
Just go back and buy more. As long as you have some money in the pocket, you're fine. You know, and I think it's just the poverty that is a lot of bothering people. And again, it comes down to how our society is built. Like I said, Ushu gets a degree from the university. Everyone is like, yeah, he's gonna find a good job. So when it gets like, the whole village won a jackpot, it's for everybody else, and that may be a lot of problematic. But I think, to some extent, life in general is really good. You have to be out and get the fresh air and step out. Step down and ground yourself, like you say, and be with other people. When we're talking to each other, there is a frequency. It's
energy.
It's good. There is energy. Yes,
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Unfortunately, here people spend a lot of time in the house by themselves, and that's so weird.
Let's make a deal. This summer,
Inshallah.
we will all break bread together. Maybe you come over to my house. We'll have a barbecue. You guys bring some food. I'll bring
Let's
some
just
food.
buy the whole goat.
I ain't buying a fucking goat.
Hey,
If you want to butcher a goat and bring a goat over, that's fine. But
don't worry. You chip in, I chip in, somebody else chips in. We get the whole goat.
I'm buying a cow,
No,
like
cows
an already good cut up cow.
That's half cow.
Why?
But just buy the whole goat, sacrifice it. Do some.
I'm not
ritual.
sacrificing goats in my.
Why not?
Honestly, I would consider it.
Okay.
I would consider.
It's not
I would love for my neighbors to look out the back door and you see all the fucking Congolese people sacrificing a goat.
I'll bring a club. We'll set up.
Is that what you do? Is just funk?
Yeah.
Oh my god. All right, I know you got to go.
Yeah.
You are literally one of my favorite people.
Listen,
we
have to talk about stuff.
you know what? I love talking to you. There's no pretension. It's honest. And there's no.
And I think it has to be that. You may disagree, on certain things, but the most important thing is people talking to each other. Once we kill the talking to each other, I think we make things worse.
I'm not interested in people who think like me. I'm not interested in talking to people who think like me.
Yeah, and again, it's like tribes in Africa. When people stick together and they all speak the same language, same culture, you don't move.
No.
You really have to reach out, intermarry, get other people, bring in some new cultures, traditions, new people, bring new knowledge,
Yes.
new understanding of certain things. You cannot just be you. There is a saying in Africa that you are only you as a human in another human.
Okay.
So you can only be you as a human in another human.
I want conversations like this, with awesome people like you to. In my delusional brain, I'm like, man, maybe that'll inspire people to not be so afraid to talk about things that would really be helpful for us to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And how to like make it better.
Yeah.
Once you have that understanding, that's the way that you can work together and love more and be more respectful and be all ships rise with the tide.
Yeah, and this is just to finalize, but one of my obsessions is that I usually want to see a time when we can look at each other as humans, just as humans, and not as labels that we put on each other. This has nothing to do with me coming to this country and looking at people's skin colors being different. It's because of where I come from. There's a lot of tribalism and ethnic rivalry in Africa. and I want to always find a way to bridge these tribal ethnic differences so we can look at each other as one. It's extremely serious there. It's very counterproductive. And unfortunately, not a lot of people, are doing making an effort to resolve that. I grew up in a place where my friends were across ethnic groups, or across tribes. They all spoke different languages. We shared the lingua franca. We spoke English at school. But we did not hate each other. We even never talked about who we are as a people. And it was beautiful, But sometimes when we went to the village, there was a little bit of that. I don't know if it's because it was school and the focus was, we at school, we were trying to learn and try to help each other out. But even after we left school, when I talked to my friend Enoch, Emma in South Sudan, I'm not saying he's a Choli. I'm not thinking, he's a Choli. He's from South Sudan. He's Luo. I'm Bantu. I'm Lega. That's not how. No, he's just my buddy. He's my brother. We grew up together. Went to school together. It's cool, Until we reach that point, all the conversation we talked about here, South Africa, and their issues, whether it's about land and resources, things coming down to skin color, who owns what, not. Like you said, it has nothing to do with skin color. Sometimes it's just, the difference between the wealthy and the poor. And sometimes because people are interested in, the other business they talked about, the emotional business, people get into things and they're supposed to be, and that arouses emotions in people. And, at the end of the day, it's in the news, it's in the newspaper, it's on TV. And that really screws people up. But until we reach that point, I'm very optimistic at some point, inshallah, by the grace of God, we'll reach a point where things will be like that. But I'm very, it really troubles me a lot, Everything comes down to a label. It's this against that. It's that against this. And I don't know.
I know. You and I both know you don't do that. Like, that's the best way.
Yeah, we don't do stuff like that, yes.
Yeah. I see you as a human being every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
That's how we should see it.
Yep.
It has to be like that. And I hope we're on a journey to something beautiful, that we can bring more people who will think like this.
I'd love that. It's gonna be tough. People are gonna get emotional, but like it's you gotta get through that. You gotta be able to say, like, I love you as a human being.
Yeah.
I don't want anything bad happening to you.
Yeah.
Ever.
There is a Congolese musician who said, and I like the way he said it, that I've never seen anything resolved on a TV set. Like, people sit there and have arguments. He's never seen anything resolved like that. People have to talk. You have to listen to the other person. Listen, it's not about argument sometimes. It's about creating understanding.
I don't want to listen to two people argue. I want to listen to two people who don't agree come to an understanding.
Right.
Where it's like, there's no way to understand anything. And look, whether it's race, whether it's religion, whether it's political party, you can't dismiss those people who don't see the world the way that you do, because that is oppression. If you want people to see the world the way that you do, you are oppressive. That's my opinion.
Yes. We have to be understanding of other people and respectful of cultures. Listen, and again, like, let's say, for example, like cultures. I'm very critical of certain, African cultural beliefs and stuff.
I'm sure you're really critical of a lot of American culture.
If they're oppressive to certain people, like I said, I'm okay with patriarchy, but if it has some toxic substances in it, I want some of that filtered out. I do not. I think it's not comfortable for me to sit there and you claim your wife is your piece of property. That's not cool.
No.
So there's certain things
partner.
that they have to be limits to it. But then things that are good, I want to appreciate it. Put value to it and encourage it.
You're a feminist.
Hey, I don't know about that.
you look. That's what it is. That's what it's about. It's about respecting women. Look. No one's going to argue about who has the power, the president or the vice president.
They both have power.
They both have power, but ultimately, like the wife is, everyone that I know, almost every woman that I know, they would love for the man to work and they raise the kids.
Oh yeah.
They would love that.
Oh yeah.
I'll make the meal. I'll raise the kids. You go put yourself in harm's way so we can survive. They would love that. I know a lot of liberal women who are like, they hate white people. They hate all this. But at the end of the day, they're like, oh yeah. If I didn't have to work and the men took care of everything. And,
they say that?
Oh yeah.
It's a confession.
It's been on the podcast. I've been like, I've called them out. I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
You hate the patriarchy,
Yeah.
but all you want is for a man to take care of you,
To
and you can raise the
sacrifice,
kids,
yeah.
and you could make the meals. Like
Yeah.
that's all you think. And you're like, yeah.
Isn't that cool? It feels good when people confess sometimes. You know?
A lot of
You can say it.
it's not that they're confessing. It's just sometimes the lies that they tell themselves slip away. You know, they're told certain things. It's just like in other countries. Like you said, it's in your culture. If you grow up and you think that like the marriage is a business deal, you don't know that there's a difference. You don't know that there's something else. It's just something cultural. If you're told all the time that like you're a victim and people have oppressed you and blah, blah, blah. And if, you know, objectively you can look at it and say that that's not true, the illusions dissolve.
Yeah, yeah. So the truth is not something you put in a box,
No.
like a commodity and sell and ship it somewhere. Eventually at some point it's going to come up, you know?
I think
you don't sell off truth.
I think truth is, if we're using minerals as truth, I think truth is something that you always mine for, but you never always get it.
Right.
As long as you keep searching.
True.
I finally gave you wisdom.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
There is always a lot of wisdom when two people or three or even more meet.
But whoever watches, I'm happy. I'm grateful. Look, I'm grateful to talk with you if there is no audience. I like talking to you all the time.
Audience is crazy.
All right, man. I love you. More to come, right?
Inshallah.
Inshallah.